Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our Justice in Pieces guest speaker series. Today's guest is, like a number of you listening, a former student here at Trias College, and so she can tell you a bit about her journey from there. And I think we were just talking; it was almost 10 years ago, so quite probably a difference in terms of the program then, and certainly being remote now, and a number of other things that she's involved with in law and in education as well. So she's going to share her journey there. So thank you so much, Amanda, here for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Now, Amanda, perhaps maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you've first of all coming to Canada and enrolling in a program, and as well, I mean, I know there's a number of things outside of practicing and working in the law, but I think that's also important for students to know that it's not like you go here and you just have this straight path of, okay, I'm going to go become licensed and I'm just going to be a paralegal for the rest of my life. So share us about the journey to come into Canada, into the program, and then beyond.
Okay, yes, I do have probably a similar story to a lot of people, within the program. I am originally from the island of Trinidad and Tobago. So it's a Caribbean island, the last island in the chain, in the Caribbean chain. And I was a teacher there for 21 years. So I was a professional, and then we migrated to Canada. So I came with my husband and my 3 children at the time. They were teenagers. The last one was about 10 when we came here. And of course, you come, with all these grandiose ideas, okay, I was a teacher. I came here, I got my certification as a teacher. They recognized all of my credentials. And guess what? Couldn't get a job. I applied to the boards year after year, month after month. I'm applying and nothing was happening. I did all the volunteering. I did everything they wanted to get onto the board to teach. And that was a complete disaster. So I said, you know what? I got to move on. I did get a teaching job, however, teaching adults, which was not my field. I always taught elementary. So I got into teaching adults through networking, taught there for 2 years, and then the unbelievable happened. I got laid off. And at that point, my whole world turned upside down, because when you work in the Caribbean and you work for the government, you're working for life. There's nothing, there's no getting laid off and stuff like that. So I didn't know what that was. And so I went into a bit of a slump for about 3 months, and then realized, okay, I need to wake up, open my eyes, and get moving. This is not working for me. I'm not getting a teaching job, and I need to work. Reality sets in. You do have a family to take care of. You have a house to pay for. So I had to get up. And this is where Trials came in. I actually started looking when I made up my mind of going back to school. I was around 39 years old. So I was not a spring chicken. I already had a career. I had to now think about starting over. Trials came into play after a couple of schools that I looked at. I did look at medics. I looked at, and I went in for an interview, with the administrator, the counseling. And I actually went in to find out about the social services worker program. I did not go in thinking anything about law. And after speaking with the admissions representative there, he looked at my credentials and he said, have you ever thought about law? And I said, not really. It was never in my mind. So why don't you think about, because I was highly qualified. I mean, I do have my bachelor's, I have my master's. And so he said, going into a social services worker program, I may be too qualified for that. I could probably, do a little bit more. I said, okay, what are my options? He pointed out the law clerk program and paralegal. I said, okay, let me go home and think about it, because it was not something I wanted to make a decision on right away. I went home and I called a colleague of mine, a friend of ours, and she worked with lawyers for many, many years. And I asked her, in your opinion, which one should I go with? Because I didn't really know about any of them. And she said, you know what, do the paralegal program. because with that one, you can always have a business on your own. And then you don't have to work for lawyers. I'm thinking, oh, well, that made up my mind, because I knew at that point in time that later on, yes, I did not want to be working for anyone per se. I wanted to have my own business, and this was the opportunity. And that's how I started doing this program. I got into trials, I did everything. I got OSAP, I had to get OSAP to pay for it. And yeah, started with trials there. Why I chose trials? I think Conestoga may have offered the program as well at the time, but I wanted to fast track. So this is what trials had offered to me. I think it was a year. And because I thought about my age as an issue, getting back into a second career, I didn't want to wait too long to get to that point. So doing the fast track program was the best option, may have been the most expensive one, but it was the best option for me at the time. Okay. Do you want me to go a little bit more into what happened after trials?
Yeah, let's continue on then. So you came to trials, you weren't necessarily the first choice of getting into the paralegal program. You went through the program, and we can talk a bit about how that experience was like in the program as well. But what happens afterwards?
So after I graduated, I did get a job right away in a paralegal firm. I was lucky. That does not always happen, and that's something we can talk about at the end. You don't always get that opportunity. So I count myself lucky. I went in at the lowest ranking position. I was a receptionist in a legal, in the paralegal firm. But it gave me the foot I needed to get into the door while I was waiting to get my license, because you don't have the license yet, so I couldn't practice as a paralegal. But in the meantime, I'm getting the experience of the law firm or the paralegal firm and learning as I go. I worked for a traffic company, a POA, provincial offenses company. They did predominant, that's the only thing they did. So I learned that field from very, very early. And I worked there for about 8 months. Then I did my exam while I was working there. The exam is completely different now, I hear. I mean, from what I hear is like 3, 4, I don't know how many hours the exam is now and how many different parts you have to do. Back then it was 3 hours, right? And it was not very difficult for me, because a lot of the questions on there came from my practical experience working in the law firm. So that was tremendous, a tremendous help towards passing the actual exam. From there, I got laid off again, but this time I wasn't too perturbed by it like the first time. The company just slowed down a bit and said, I got to lay you off. And I said, okay. I said, okay. I mean, I wasn't scared this time. There was no fear. There was no unknown for me again. I was just going to go forward with whatever. I got hired on right after that to another company and worked there for 3.5 years. And I learned a lot there. As a paralegal, now I'm working as a paralegal. So I've always been lucky to get into positions where I was now able to work as a paralegal and get the experience that I needed. After that company, I left on my own because I felt at that point, I needed to get exposure in court. I was not getting enough courtroom exposure. So I needed to do that. For me to get it, I had to go out on my own. And this is what I did. I did it for a while. I did probably about a year. I went out on my own, practicing again, a little bit more of the provincial offenses and more small claims. And I've kind of stuck to the small claims since then. Landlord and tenant, I've done a bit of it, not my favorite area, but. And then I got a corporate job after that, working as a paralegal again. Now I was going to court almost every day, and this was in Toronto. So I was getting all the court experience that I needed or that I wanted. And I learned a lot. Each time that I went to court, you learn something completely new. that you can now pass on to others. And, yeah, so that's pretty much it. Now I'm on my own again and teaching part-time. So I've kind of blended my careers now in a bit. I'm working both areas at this point in time. Yeah, so that's
That's
pretty
great.
much my journey.
No, that's great. And it's actually coincidental, but on Friday I have a lawyer who's gone back to teachers college, and I think they're almost through the process there, and it's also kind of a good thing that we'll pick up with in a couple of days here. But how do you find blending that education background, because I mean you have 2-3 decades of
Oh yeah,
experience,
three
if not
decades.
more, in education, and then you have that the practical legal experience as well as studying law, and how does that kind of intersect with one another in the two things that you're doing, and how do you find that your knowledge of the law helps with education and vice versa?
Okay, so they're both, for me, I see them both as people oriented fields. Okay, so I have to deal with people on both ends. In the teaching now, I teach adults. That's my predominant area. And I was teaching adults, and with my law side, there's no real intersection in terms of the two blending, right? And the one overlapping the other. They're completely distinct right now. My hope was at one point that I'll get them to blend, but that hasn't turned out yet. But dealing with the people, on the legal side, I gained the experience of learning how to deal with them from my teaching side. So that's, in terms of overlapping, that's the only overlap there. My patience of dealing with people, learning to deal with people, how to handle emotions, because in the law, you deal with a lot of individuals who are emotional, especially in small claims, and landlord and tenant for that matter. A lot of emotions, and you have to almost explain things to them in a different way. And learning how to do that from the teaching aspect has gone over to the legal. Yeah, so that's where the intersection is. I had an interview last year sometime, and the thought came up of your zone of genius, right? And for me, teaching is my zone of genius. So my zone of genius there is the one-of-a-kind quality that you bring to your life and to your work, and lets you do certain things better than almost anyone else. And to me, too, because I've had the 30 years plus of educational experience, I think that's my zone of experience, my zone of genius. That's why I've pretty much kept to it. I've never, ever left education. I've always had my hand in it in some way. And even with the legal part of it too, I do some mentoring with people. People call me. I've met people on Instagram, for that matter, who said, "Hey, I have a question." I said, "Call me. I can, help walk you through it." And that's where the teaching or the instructional part comes in as well. The mentoring of other paralegals who need that help along the way. And again, when coming to the end of this, we talk about mentoring and networking as being important for newbies or new paralegals coming into the field. Yeah, so that's pretty much where that overlapping comes in, the instructional part and the mentoring in terms of the education and the legal per se.
Now, great. Now in terms of education, I think certainly on your LinkedIn here, you say you're passionate about empowering others to build self-confidence and break through barriers to success. And I know we've talked a bit about some of the barriers you faced coming to Canada, kind of reinventing, going through periods where you were laid off and having to rebuild and change and transfer. So what can you share? I mean, share that passion here with us. And again, as long as you're probably aware, I mean, a lot of the students that come here either are looking into a second career or looking for a change in terms of where they want to be. And it's really challenging, right? I mean, I have students like you were 10 years ago, right? That were in their 30s, or I think I have someone in maybe their 60s, and the same thing, right? And it's very challenging, right? Because you're like, look, I need to do a reset or a pivot. And certainly the pandemic doesn't help with that, right? In terms of options may not be there. So what can you share about that kind of journey and how people can break through these barriers and achieve the success, whether it's in law or somewhere else?
Or anything else, yeah. And I mean, while they're studying the paralegal program, and yes, they hope to be a paralegal somewhere down the road. This may or may not happen. I don't want to burst anybody's bubble, but reality is out there that it's a tough field to break into. But if you can use your skills in some way to do something in that, right? One of the things I would say in terms of being successful or being empowered going forward and building your self-confidence is, one, keeping your eyes on the goal. Because you're doing this for a purpose. You're doing this for some reason in your life, whether it is for family, maintaining your family, you have to do a new job, whether you're just doing it because you think, I need to do something different. Whatever your goal is, you have to keep that at the forefront of your mind, because if you don't, then you lose that motivation to keep going. Because the paralegal program is not an easy program to go through, and I'm sure it's even more comprehensive now. As you said, it's going to be different. And there are challenges with that itself, just doing the program and keeping yourself motivated while doing it. So yes, keeping your eyes on the why. Keep that vision in front of you. Why am I doing this? And you're going to keep motivated. Being persistent and not giving up. It's easy to throw in the towel and say, well, I don't, this is too much for me. I don't want to do that. I deal with that every day in my adult teaching. People give up very easily. So they always you have to have someone there as well. If you have a support system in place that will be able to keep you going, keep you so you don't give up. That's one of the things I had a great support system with my husband. My children were younger, yes, but my husband was my main support system at the time because I wasn't working while I was studying. So that was an even greater challenge. Okay, I was studying full time. I would pick up the odd part-time jobs here and there, but nothing to say that will cover the bills as we need them to. So it was a rough year, but I didn't give up. And never be afraid to ask for something that you want within the if you need the help in the program, don't be afraid to reach out and ask, can I get some help with this? There's always going to be somebody to help you. Even you, John, you will be able to guide them. If they come to you and say, I need help, you will be able to guide them to someone who can help them, I'm sure. But and again, older people may not want to ask for the help, but don't be afraid. Just ask. I need help. I'm struggling. And having that support system will help. And simply believing in yourself. That's, I think, one of the major things, believing in what you are capable of doing, believing in your skills and using them to your advantage. It's got to be a complete mindset change, and just to keep yourself motivated and going forward and having faith. That's a religious thing, or it doesn't have to be religious, but having faith in something, that somebody's got your back. And this, those are some of the main things in terms of breaking those barriers, and mainly the confidence and having the mindset to go forward.
Now, specifically, again, the mindset is certainly extremely important, right? Because a lot of times you feel discouraged, and that kind of perpetuates itself, right? That others, if you go into an interview and you're like, oh, I'm not going to get this job anyways, like, why am I even doing it? Then that kind of comes through, right? A lot of the communication I teach students, a lot of the is nonverbal, right? It's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it and what you look like. It's
how you're saying it. Mm-hmm.
And so maybe you can talk specifically, about the students that are coming here from different countries, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a challenge right away, right? You're coming to a new place. I'm sure you don't see as much snow in Trinidad in terms of the winters here. and just kind of making that adjustment in terms of things like how you mentioned being laid off, right? That's something that you never would have
Never
to
knew what it
figure it out
was.
there.
Mhm.
So how, I mean, for those students in terms of kind of making that adjustment, as well as, we were talking about the the midlife sort of career pivots there. How do you can keep that mindset there with all of that going on, and what resources, on top of your support system there that you mentioned, that they can look at if maybe they're, a lot of people come here and they're the only ones here, right? They come from a country, and they're the first people here in Canada, and they don't know anybody here, or maybe they have like a distant relative or friend. And what kind of helps get through that and keep you going forward?
Um, Finding your community is one. Getting involved in your community. I got very involved in my community. It took me about a couple of years, but I did. So I actually am part of the Caribbean Association in Waterloo region. I met someone on the bus. I used to work in Cambridge, and this lady, she kept bugging me every time because we traveled together in the bus. She said, "Why don't you come and join the organization?" I said, "I'll come, but not yet." So a few years later, when I was actually ready, I did call her up and say, "Hey, I think I'm ready to come to a meeting now." So I did. And I've been with them now about 6 years. I'm actually on the executive of the board now. But being involved with the community is just another, or your own community, is just another layer of support that you have. And it offers not only like a small family unit, but it also gives you networking support. Okay, so in your community, you may know individuals who have their own businesses, or they may know someone who can help you get a job as a paralegal or something. So that's where the support comes in. So get involved with your community for sure. There are, again, I'm guessing for newcomers especially, there are the newcomer organizations out there. I mean, like I'm in Kitchener-Waterloo, so I know there's a KW Multicultural Center. And there are quite a few around that help. There are the employment centers. But again, to me, the main thing is getting involved in your community. If you don't have that immediate family support. A lot of the immigrants that come here, like myself, now, for me, I came from an English-speaking country. So I think one of the barriers that some of your students might actually face is not having English as their first language. And again, I see that every single day because I do work with adults, and a lot of them, English is not their first language. I actually do teach ESL a few days a week, and I see it. They struggle. How do they manage in the workplace? They do it for years, and they just get by. But learning English will help in any situation if it is not your first language, especially if you want to land that job as a paralegal in a firm or have your own company, and you have to go to court. Being bilingual is amazing. That actually helps your clients if you're bilingual. So yeah, so those are some of the things, some of the ideas that I have right now that I can throw out there for support.
Now, since you have that background, for English as a second language, and I often find that sometimes is the issue. A lot of students that they know the law, they've been lawyers maybe even back in their home countries, and so understanding the legal concepts, they're able to grasp it, but in terms of maybe expressing themselves in either their writing or their speaking, I think those tend to be the most challenging areas. I have students say, I please don't pick me for a question in class because I feel nervous about answering it, right? But I mean, if they go on to become paralegals, first of all, they're going to have to communicate in English, whether written or oral. So, I mean, do you have any advice from that, your years of experience and certainly here teaching English that can help maybe, no, I mean, obviously legal English, there's different words and vocabulary there, but I mean, I think how can you improve in terms of both your oral and written communication?
Talk English, immerse yourself in English. And I tell my students that every day because I have students who are from Colombia, I have Guatemala, I have people who speak Polish. It's a whole range. And I tell them, I said, for you to be able to speak English fluently, you have to immerse yourself in the language. So listen to English television, listen to English radio, read English materials because they don't. And I'm sure if you ask any one of those students in your class that do not have English as a first language, you ask them, so what language do you speak at home? They speak in their native language and they'll listen to television and the news and everything in their native language. It's not English. And they talk to their community people in their language. So they don't immerse themselves. So my advice for them, if you want to be proficient in the language and you're going to need it when you're in the courtroom, you write, or when you're writing a claim or any kind of motion or doc, you have to be proficient in writing the language. Immerse yourself in it. Talk only English. Try, I know you want to maintain both languages, you want to maintain the native, but immerse yourself in it. That's the only way you're going to be able to read and write and speak in English in a proficient manner. Immersion.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I think that's, like I said, sometimes it's not about understanding the law, it's about being able to express it. And I think that's certainly going to help. And again, there's a number of different, as you mentioned, programs that are available that, usually are for free as well for newcomers. So make sure you're taking advantage of those and certainly
exactly
the different.
And what my students use, and I've been using it for Spanish, Duolingo is free. It's a free app on the phone. It helps. They love it. They're learning English off of it. And I'm using it for Spanish. So you can learn any language on it. It's cool.
Great. I see a question here about, one of the reasons you said to go, you ultimately opted for the paralegal program was operating your own, the ability to operate your own business, right? So in the event that ever, you didn't have to rely on working for a lawyer ever again. Now, any advice there, both from what you're doing there in terms of kind of organizing yourself and getting that mindset of, if I have to deal with things a little bit differently than being like, the traditional like 9 to 5 kind of employee. And then like you're doing now, you're doing a number of different things as well. How do you navigate that? How do you manage it? I think a lot of students feel very apprehensive about, hey, I'm going to go and I'm going to start my own business. And what do I do with that?
Yeah, I've answered a couple of those questions. I've seen those questions pop up in Facebook. There's a Facebook group for paralegals. And I've seen it pop up several times. And I'll always pop in and tell them, listen, when you become a paralegal or when you now leave the program and you get your license, jumping into your own business will be challenging. You're not going to make the kind of money that you think you're going to make from the very start. So what you need to do is have a second job. You have to have a second job, unless you have money sitting in a bank somewhere that you can live off of while you get your paralegal business off the ground. And starting a business does not have to be overly expensive. I didn't put a lot of money into starting my business. I did everything on my own. I learned a lot about building a website, so I didn't have to pay someone to do it. I learned about writing the content for my website. Depending on I like writing, so that was easy. That was the easy part for me. Getting your name out there, that's very important. So when starting up, I always say, well, have that second job going if you can, right? I still run my paralegal business as secondary to my teaching job. And getting your name out there, building your name, that is important. People don't know you, they don't come to you. And building integrity within the profession is important. You don't want because other paralegals will refer people to you. That's how the business works. Some people come yes off the street, some find you on your website, and other paralegals will refer you. If they don't like your attitude or they don't like how you do things or how you practice, they're not referring people to you. I always tell people the name is important. Okay, so if I were to, my name follows me wherever I go. And I make sure that my name is held with integrity and get my name out there as best as I can and building that network. The business again, yeah, just do a lot of research. Accounting is very important and having a business, especially to, to keep law society compliance. That is important. I try not to keep a trust account because I know that is important to the law society. That's other people's money. So I don't deal with the trust account. I just have my general. And again, because my client base is just small claims. Sometimes I'm now kind of pivoted away from that. So my life is all about pivoting. Right? It's ever changing. So I have pivoted away from that a bit, and I'm just more doing the notary and commissioning product things because that's what I have the time for, because I don't have the time for court anymore. But I just do commissioning, and that actually has picked up quite a bit. So pivoting and getting your name out there, knowing who you are, being authentic to yourself and your business, getting to know people, getting to networking, mentoring is another thing. Having mentors. I was lucky to have mentors throughout my 10 years so far of practicing as a paralegal. I have 2 or 3 mentors that I talk to all the time. I can run ideas off of them, or if I got a case that was a little bit difficult, I would call them and say, okay, what do you think about this? So having that mentor, a shelf with your mentors on there is good to have as well. So you're not alone, really, because it could be a very lonely place if you're having a business with no support. Especially if you're a sole proprietorship. If you're having a company that with more than one paralegal, that's different. You got to have a lot of resources to do that. But as a sole proprietorship like myself, you are everything. You are the accountant, you are the marketing specialist, you are the customer service rep, you are everything in that when you're on your own. So you have to be, you gotta give yourself the tools. And I do it by reading and by learning how to do the skills on my own. So I don't have to spend the kind of money that other people might spend. Like building a website can cost a lot of money. I just do it on my own. So my website out there is mine. I did that. No cost for me except what I pay for hosting it. That's it.
So did you kind of just develop those skills there on your own, or how did that come about? And the other thing there, I mean, you mentioned mentorship. Maybe you can kind of discuss this as well, because again, we're in a pandemic where maybe it's not as easy as going and approaching people, having a cup of coffee. I mean, I guess hopefully things are changing over the next few weeks.
I hope so. Yes.
But explain, how do you kind of build those networks and seek out that mentorship and the importance there? Because again, especially as you said, if you have your own business, it is pretty lonely because you don't see anybody. I mean, I remember being at a firm and you can literally walk and knock on a door in the office and there would be somebody there potentially who could provide you guidance, but we don't have that if you're working on your own.
So on your own, no, you don't.
What can you share about kind of getting mentors? And I know you mentioned the Facebook groups and stuff like that, but what can students do to seek out networking and mentorship opportunities?
Good question. For me, I happened to maintain when I was on my internships through Trios. 2 of my mentors actually came from that internship because I worked with them during the during that 120 days, however many was. And I maintained my friendships with them because they both went out on their own practices. And so I maintained communication with them. So wherever I worked, for example, so if I worked at another firm in Cambridge, and the manager there is also one of my mentors. Even though I don't work there anymore, I still call him if I need advice on something. And he's very open to giving that advice. So I'm guessing for new students coming out there and getting mentors, if there are networking events available, I would suggest you go. and I guess the Law Society has some, even the paralegal associations sometimes have mentorships. And I know the federal, the new one that's formed up recently, the Federal Paralegals of Ontario, the association, they're on Facebook. They do offer some kind of mentorship as well as they're getting into it. So even if they don't, if they're part of the Facebook groups or social media or wherever, reach out to people. Don't, and earlier I said, don't be afraid to ask. Reach out to people, even if you don't know them. Joining LinkedIn, for example, LinkedIn is a very professional network. Set up your profile in LinkedIn, reach out to people and say, hi, I'm a new paralegal, can I reach out to you if I have a question? If people send me a message like that, I would never say no. So never be afraid to ask, just reach out, especially now, as you said, John, it's the pandemic time. And we're not meeting people in person, but we do Zoom calls, we do telephone calls, WhatsApp, video calls. The one person that I mentored recently, she's somewhere out in Barrie somewhere. I met her on Instagram and she reached out to me. She said, I don't know her. She said, can I ask you a question about something? I said, sure. You can call me on this number or send me a quick email. Not a problem. And I gave her my email address. So I think we're there. Most paralegals that are out there will help, especially the more seasoned ones, the ones who've been around for a little while, will be willing to help. I've never seen one that's not willing or met one. So the new paralegals coming out just have to be open and post a question out there or just reach out. So can you help me, or will you be willing to mentor me? Or if I have a question, can I call you on this? The answer will probably, my thing is, if you never ask, the answer will always be no. So just ask.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, because, it's kind of like there was this, it's like a Michael Jordan quote, like, you miss all the shots you don't take, right? And it's true, right? Because you're never going to know unless, even if you missed, at least, even if you get one out of, 8 or something, that's still one more than if you
It's still one more than you had when you started. Correct. Mm-hmm.
And so I was going to ask you about the website there. I mean, what kind of, like, you said, okay, I want to get this. How did you sort of look at getting some of those skills, or did you have them before? And, or how did you find putting things like that together?
Trial and error. Trial and error. And I guess I may have a little bit of a creative side. I don't know, but I just use that. I know how I want it to look, and I just created the way I want it to look. I did later on because I have a secondary website for my empowerment thing. And I did a WordPress. That one is WordPress, and WordPress is very difficult to manipulate. So I wouldn't recommend anyone trying WordPress unless they know exactly how to do it. For me, it was trial and error. Start for WordPress. And then I did a course through my school where I teach. I did a WordPress program. So I have my certification to do that now. But I won't do it for anybody else. It's too much work. My legal business website, that's a regular, building website builder thing. You just drag and move things around how you want it. So it's not difficult. It's not difficult for anyone to learn to do it. It may take some time, but you can set up a website in an hour if you really want to, at no cost.
Yeah, and again, it's developing skills. And one of the other things there that certainly I think is important is that people don't realize, if they're going and starting their own business, as much as eventually maybe you have the ability to pay for all these people to do all of these things, as much as it will teach you how to be a paralegal and practice management, you still need to get all of those things done, right? I mean, it's not just you need to know the law and that's it, right? And I think what's important here, maybe you can talk about is, especially because you have all of these other projects and other things you're doing, how you can sort of navigate everything and do a practice on a sort of part-time kind of basis and still be able to take care of all the things you need to do there, but still being able to do other things. And I think it's different, right? It's different than something more traditional in the 90s and the 2000s, where people
It
would say,
is.
look, you know what, I'm going to be a lawyer, or I'm going to be a paralegal, or whatever profession, and I'm going to put in these hours, and I'm going to stay at this company, and in 10 years hopefully I'll be promoted up to the to run it, or anything. So what's that like in terms of cobbling all of these different things together and finding, every day is different, I bet, right?
Oh yeah, every day is different, and I actually enjoy it. During my reading some time ago, I do a lot of reading, a lot of research on the internet, things like that, and I came across this word called a multi-potentialite. I didn't know what it was. I said, what's a multi-potentialite? So I looked it up and I read it was someone who has multiple interests. So I said, oh, I'm one of those because I like to do different things. So we're no longer stuck in that box where this is what you have to do for the rest of your life. And that's where I was back in Trinidad when I was a teacher. I was in that box. I was put in that box, and I stayed there for 21 years and realized if I had stayed there, if I'd stayed on the island, I would have been still in that box, and not trying anything different. But coming to Canada gave me an opportunity to explore different things. And as I got older, I realized, there's so many things that I want to do that I love doing, and I got to make it fit into my day. So education, as I said, has always been there for me. I teach adults now, as I said, but my job is relatively flexible when it comes to teaching the adults. And it came at a really good time when I started my business as a paralegal, because I wanted to maintain my legal background as a paralegal, because I went to school for this. I'm not going to let it waste. I'm going to use it. And having my own business meant I needed to have another job. And the teaching job that I got came in just at the very same time that I decided to go back into practice on my own. So they both blended beautifully in terms of timing and being able to do both of them at the same time without overcrowding my time. So that's how I'm able to do that one. And then I started doing the empowerment thing, which has always been in the background for me, but came more prevalent last year during COVID, because I had an incident. Well, one of my colleagues died. And at that point, I wanted to start doing something a bit different, because it's not the first time that has happened when I realized, okay, someone has died and we didn't know what was going on with that person, emotionally on that side. And I said, no, things have to be different. So I started writing more. And then I got into doing the videos. And I'm sure you've seen a few of the videos that I've done over the last few months. And those just evolved. People asked me, so what are you doing with that? And I said, I really didn't know. I was just doing it because I felt the passion and the need to do it. And I was doing it. But it's something that I love. So when I say I'm a multi-potentialized, because now I'm doing all of these three things in my life, but they're not overcrowding my life. I'm still able to do all three of them with the same intensity and the same passion without getting it muddled and without getting overwhelmed, simply because I love doing all of it. And once you love doing something, it doesn't feel like work, really. Not for me.
Yeah, I think that quote comes up a few times with a lot of people very passionate about what they're doing. It's like, if you love what you're doing, you don't, you never work a day in your life, right? So
yeah, I heard that. Yeah, it's true. I mean, that's how I feel. I mean, yes, the legal world can get stressful. I mean, but you have to be able to know how to deal with the stress. And then I would just if I find I'm getting overwhelmed with legal stuff, I would just kind of step back a little bit, and that's the beauty of having your own business, because you can take on as many clients as you want or not. I can go through a period and say, you know what, I don't want any clients right now, and I'm good. Let me just deal with the ones that I have. Or I can decide I can take on some more clients right now. I can take on 5 more and do that. what I do now with just the commissioning and the whatever and the the notarizing, I do work later hours for them. And because I'm working from home, it's not stressful. It's easy for me. There's no stress, there's no overwhelm. The clients come and spend 5-10 minutes and they leave. So I don't have to deal with files and court and the court being shut down and nothing is happening in the courts and the whole drama that's going on right now. So I don't have to deal with that.
You mentioned sort of the the stress and the anxiety and sort of the legal field, and it goes, I mean, really in any field.
Mhm.
Certainly we've had a pandemic, and thanks also for sharing. Obviously, as a result, there are, whether directly or indirectly related, as you mentioned, people are going through a lot, and some people have passed away. And what can you share in terms of, first of all, maybe your own experiences and own advice in terms of how you personally deal with finding that time to take care of your mental health and look after yourself, especially again in the legal field where we do tend to forget sometimes about ourselves, and we're so
Mhm.
busy helping others, we forget about the people in the mirror. But and as well of kind of getting through those challenges, and anything you can share with my students, because again, everyone may be different, but sometimes it's good to get different perspectives to help you realize what's going to help you.
Um, for me, it's my whole part of the breakthrough to success that I do, the empowerment part, that is actually my stress relief part, believe it or not. So that's why I don't get the overwhelm, because teaching can get overwhelming with the students that we have. But I try not to bring that with me at the end of the day, you know. And when I get into my breakthrough to success or my empowerment work, that is where my release is. And I put all my creativity into that. So I do a lot of reading on that. I do a lot of creating with the videos, and I have a lot of fun doing it. So you have to find a creative outlet. I think that's one way of relieving stress. You may not be creative in one way, but you can find something. People can find different things to do. I've known people who started painting or reading or doing little things like that. For me, it was my creative outlet. Came in with the writing that I wrote some things before, but I started writing more seriously during the pandemic. And of course, the whole breakthrough to success videos. That was my release for stress. And I had a lot of fun doing what I did, and I'm still doing it. So that's why it kept evolving with me. So finding a creative outlet is one thing. Making sure to take time out for yourself, whatever it is, whether you're reading a book, just being silent. Like me, I love sitting now it's summertime. I just love sitting on my deck. I would sit out there for hours doing whatever I want, with no one to bother me. Going for walks sometimes, can be stress release options. Yeah, I don't know. We can't go anywhere now in terms of travel. We can't travel yet, but some people may want to travel. I don't know, just finding that creative outlet, and we can't go into the spa if you can, but we can't right now. So this pandemic has really put a damper on a lot of things for people that it's hard to even find something to do, I didn't mind being home because I just said, I found my creative outlet. So I did not mind being home too much, but for others it's completely different.
Yeah, and I believe some of those things are coming middle of next week or something, I think. But
Hopefully.
we'll see for those who want to go to the salon or the spa there, like you mentioned.
I know.
I think
Here.
that's coming. People are going to get some haircuts, I think, very shortly. Now, since you finished in 2000 and I think 11 or 2012 in the program here and became licensed, maybe a while back in terms of remembering, that period of time. But I think, thank you so much here for joining us here and sharing everything with the students here in 2021. So it's kind of, a nice 10-year reflection and piece there for you. Now, any final words of advice for students who are listening who want to make a similar transition? And again, as you pointed out, you don't have to go in this one path. I mean, one of the things here, we've been doing this since the pandemic, is there's so many different stories, whether lawyers or paralegals or politicians or judges or whomever, they have a different story of how they interact with the legal system. And I think it's important for students to know that there's no one path. You're going to go and you do this. So any final words of wisdom for them as they look to make the transition from being students and going out into working and hopefully practicing as paralegals or even not?
And networking, make sure you network. I always say network. If you want to get out there, get your name out there, make sure you reach out to people and within the paralegal, fraternity, or even whatever legal fraternity you're in. Get your name out there. Maintain your integrity when you get out there, because your name follows you. People will know you by your name. Getting out there as well, expectations. Very important. Do not set your expectations too high, because then you will get disappointed, because you're not, while some others might be lucky to get their feet right into the door, some others may not be as lucky. I've known people who have studied the same year as I did and are still not practicing. They have actually gone off into completely different fields because they didn't follow through. They either didn't take the extra step of doing the exam, or doesn't feel the need to at that point, or maybe didn't have the support. I don't know why, but yeah, they didn't go forward. So expectations, manage your expectations when you leave the program. A lot of people want to go out there and they're excited to, and I see it all the time on the Facebook groups. Oh, I just got my license. I'm going to register my business. I'm going to start my business soon. And then who knows what happens, and sometimes it will fall flat on your face. So manage expectations when you get out there. That's one of the things. And so networking, expectations, and your name, maintaining your integrity are some of the three things that I would, in terms of advice. Also keeping motivated. Try to keep motivated with and keeping your why in mind. If you definitely want to be a paralegal, or even take your skills that you're learning now into a different path, always keep, it doesn't matter. You'll have your vision, but you can take a different route to get it. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same path. As you said earlier, John, people think that when they leave, it's one straight path to the end. It may not be that way. There may be some navigation along the way, but eventually when you get there, just the vision may not change, but the path, how you get there, will probably change, So that's some of the main things, and making sure you have your mentorship. Never be afraid to ask a question.
Great. And I think those are perfect words to end on there. And thank you so much once again, Amanda, for joining us here today. And again, for everyone for tuning in. And we'll be back again tomorrow at 5:00. Wish you all the best, and take care, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks so much, Amanda. Have a great day.
Thank you. You're welcome.